Okay, so as we said earlier, we have, I'll just start back from the top. As I said earlier, we have individual mics on all the drums. So we actually have 2 microphones on the kick drum. There's one inside of the drum and one on the outside hole. So if you don't know, there's a pedal that the drummer uses to hit the kick drum. That inside microphone is getting a lot of that attack of that beater hitting the head. It's kind of almost plasticky sometimes. It's very snappy. It's a lot of high end of that higher end information up around the 4 to 6K range that we're trying to get out of that. And then there's a microphone on the outside. So just given the size of a bass drum and the big, because it's so much larger, there's it's lower information. It's bigger waves. So we actually have a larger diaphragm microphone on that to capture the larger waves, okay? A smaller diaphragm microphone, the diaphragm is the portion here that actually picks up the wave, picks up the signal. A smaller diaphragm cannot get the larger waves of the lower hertz, okay? And so we have a larger diaphragm microphone on that, the one that's out there in the hole, and there's actually a lot of air pushing out of that hole. That's why we put holes in the drum head, for that air to push out of there right into our microphone, and that gets a lot of that low end oomph, that really low end information. So we blended 2 of those in together. The one inside getting a lot of the more full range kind of round tonal shape with some of the snap of that beater hitting the head, and then that one on the outside of the microphone getting all that low end oomph, that actual air movement, okay? 2 microphones on the snare, as we said, one on top, one on bottom. So the thing that makes a snare different than the other drums is on the bottom head, there's actual metal wires. When they hit it, those wires are snapping against that head, and that's creating that tsh. That's why a snare sounds different than the other drums, okay? So we want a microphone on the bottom that's just capturing that, to blend those 2 together. So on the top, it's kind of dark and thuddy. That's how I like to describe it. I like a lot of in that snare. And that bottom mic is getting all that that snap, that crack, we like to say. And so we're blending those 2 together. The hi-hat, each tom, and then the overheads. The overheads we use is kind of an overall picture of the entire kit. They're primarily 4 cymbals. They mainly pick up cymbals, but they are getting an entire picture. So that's kind of what those are doing, and that's our entire setup. Then at our permanents, we also have a microphone on the ride, which is the one where if they're they play like this, you know, not just crashing it, but they ride it. So a lot of times the overhead microphone just won't pick up enough definition on that, and so we added 1 microphone here on that ride mic to accentuate that and just create a little more clarity on that. So on the ride microphone is mic'd underneath, and the snare bottom mic is mic'd underneath. Everything else is downward facing, okay? So on those mics that are facing the opposite, we have the polarity reversed, because we talked about that, because they're getting opposite waves than what the rest of the microphones are getting. So we reverse it to put them all in the correct polarity together with one another. So on the microphones that are upward facing, the ride mic and the snare bottom, we have the polarity reversed on that so that they're all getting the same wave shapes together. That is done. Up here at the top, you see there's this little signal here, the circle with a line through it. And so on the snare bottom, you see that red marker activated there and there, meaning the polarity is reversed on those 2. Okay? The next bank is all of our guitars, keys, and percussion. So bass guitar. For this event, from this file that I pulled, we had a bass synth, which is like a little tiny keyboard that just does doo, doo. It just makes notes like a bass guitar, but instead of like with a bass guitar where you pluck it and it's after your string vibrates, it goes doo, doo, doo. With the synth, a keyboard, it can maintain a note for however long you want to hold the key. Boo, boo. So that's what that is. 2 electric guitars, 2 acoustic guitars. The stereo keyboards, as I said earlier, you see all these are all singular mono inputs here. The keyboards are stereo, meaning you see 2 inputs, a left and a right. For keyboard 1, 2, and then our 3 track lines, as well as our reverb. Okay? Next is all of the vocal channels, which we discussed, are living as 1, and then our 6 singers, and then the reverb is for them. Okay? Down there is living as 1, which is all of our point-to-point streaming. It's what gets sent from the Fredericksburg campus to all our receiving campuses to transmit Pastor Daniel's message and whatever else. Actually, since we're all here, I can tell everyone we just got approval. We are buying the parts needed to where we will begin sending 16 channels of audio to all campuses, not just 8. That's going to be fun. So it's going to provide a lot more options for us. So we'll be able to send out Pastor Daniel, the lead vocalist. We will have one spare vocal channel, which will be like either if Pastor Tammy comes up or Pastor Daniel has to go to the backup microphone, or if there's a second singer on a point-to-point song, that can come down that one channel. We can have several split out tracks and keys lines coming to you guys. One line for the click, one line for the cues track, and the live MD, our video, and then you'll get a full backup mix. So the same mix that we send to the stream, you will also get via point-to-point. And so if things go haywire on your campus and you lose whatever else, you can push that up and you have a complete mix from Fred to at least have that in the room if all else fails. Okay? So that's all 16 channels. So by January 2020, you will be rolling that out. Cool? We haven't talked about flow moments. Okay, so the first 20, 25 minutes of our services are all programmed out. Okay, they're playing tracks from Ableton. Like I said, that's all pretty much straightforward. A lot of times we'll then go into a point-to-point moment, what we call point-to-point, which is where from Fredericksburg we send to the campuses, we send the click, we send the track files, and then your local band and local singers sing along with us from Fred. That's how we just kind of unite our whole church all together as one house and syncs up everyone together. So that is meaning from here, the drummer presses spacebar there, it sends the click everywhere, and all together from Culpeper to King George to Richmond to Stafford, Spotsy in here, we can all play in sync together as one church in many different rooms. So that's all programmed out. After that, a lot of times we'll go into what's called a flow moment, where a pastor will come up and he'll speak a word of encouragement, and then he'll, based on kind of just the spirit, whatever he feels, he'll kind of lead us back into a chorus, back into the bridge, who knows what. For those moments, there's not tracks guiding us. They keep the click going, so everyone still stays in time, but there's no more tracks playing, there's no more cues of go to the bridge, go to the chorus. So for that moment, the Fredericksburg music director has a microphone, which also gets sent point to point to everywhere, and he says, all right, guys, we're going to go to the chorus. Ready, chorus, 2, 3, 4. All right, going to the bridge. Bridge again. So at that point, the MD here is just reading the room, reading pastor, reading this worship leader, and instinctively kind of deciding where we're going to go and telling everyone where to go and keeping us all in sync that way. So that is why you have the Living as One music director channel. Okay, as I said, here is that primary bank where it's kind of all the master controls you could need for everything. We'll dive more into this in depth in our next session. But as I said, these are master controls for your drums, band, vocals, your effect reverbs, and then some primary input channels that we can have there. We'll go through all that. And then the IEM bank, again, it stands for in-ear monitors, and that's going to be the auxiliary send to each player of how we can control what they need. So this shows the overall value of what the level being sent to them, and then we can select each of their mixes and then control on the faders what they hear, and they'll say, can I get more or less of this, more or less of that, and we make those adjustments for them for each player. Okay? Yeah, we'll talk more about that in the next session. Yep. Any other questions?
We cover here because we talked about the drums, but setting up the overheads.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about phase and time arrival of signal. what's a way on the portable campuses that where we're breaking down, setting them up, they never set up the same way twice?
Right.
What's a way we can be consistent in that sound?
Yeah, so the easiest way to check phase on a drum kit in a quick portable situation is to grab you a cable and do a measurement. I sit down behind the kit with a cable, and I just measure out from the snare drum to one overhead, and measure to the other overhead, and and move them, adjust them until they are equal, to where both overheads are at an equal distance from the snare drum. Snare drum meaning it's kind of the loudest thing, it's the most consistently hit thing, so that's what I'm using as my 0 point, okay? So time from the snare to this overhead, from the snare to this overhead, and then between the two overheads. You want all that to be an equilateral triangle. So just get you a cable, measure it out from snare to here, and then between the two, and just adjust them up or down, further away or closer as needed, whatever, to make that all an equilateral triangle, and that will give you completely in phase microphones. Not a huge difference, but you will go, oh, especially if you solo just your overheads, instead of hearing like, if you turn the rest of the drum mics off and just turn up your overheads, you might hear a little bit of as it hits the snare, because it's doing that thing, that it is doing that phase comb filtering. You get them all in time, all lined up just right, and you go, there's the whole kit. You can push the overheads up and you go, I can hear the whole kit. Now I just get to sweeten it with these individual mics. Oh yeah, super great. So, yeah. Yeah, so with them underneath, which is what we're going to, again, to get away from stands, and it works fine, it's easier. You don't really have to worry about it. There's nothing you can do about it, more so. Once they are underneath, you would then invert the polarity, because it is underneath, so it's kind of opposite of what the other mics are. So you reverse the polarity, and then there's not really much you can do in terms of the phase for that. Cool?
Going back to the feedback bit real quick, when there's a moment when the whole band is playing, but you can still hear a bit of feedback in the system, how do you figure out which mic is causing it when everything seems kind of level as far as the levels on the board?
That's a great question. It's kind of hard to say on a theoretical situation without being there or hearing it. I would hope it's coming from a vocal mic and not something else. So I would start by just kind of backing them all down eventually. My approach with vocal mics is you have to have the leader up. Okay, we have to hear the leader. Beyond that, it's up for grabs. It's up for debate. Okay, we have to hear the leader. Right. The leader's leading the whole congregation. They're saying the words. We want the people to be able to understand the words and follow them. The rest of the singers, we want them represented in the mix, but it's up for debate if you're having feedback problems. Now, ideally, we want to hear them all and hear them well and have a nice, even blend. But if you're having problems, it's up for grabs. And if you have to, I mean, do whatever you have to bring them down to make them not feedback. But I would trace it down and probably start by reducing the gain on all of them. First of all, make sure all the gains match, and then try bringing them down to get what you need. Okay? We'll probably cover more of that in our last session today and discuss that. Great. Cool. Any other questions?